Right now, the U.S. and China are at the heart of it. U.S. tariffs are up 145 against Chinese goods, and China's brought their tariffs to 125 on the U.S. It's gone from playing chicken to no one back in town. Things escalating fast. Clips from Victor Gao, vice president of the Center for China and Globalization, saying we don't care when asked about the possibility of losing U.S. markets. He's not an official CCP speaker, but his views align with their stance, giving insight into the Chinese sentiment.
The United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So, if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is
We
15%.
don't
You
care.
can't.
We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States, and we expect to survive.
On April 8th, Lin Jian, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, an official CCP voice said, if the U.S. is determined to fight a tariff and trade war, and China is determined to fight to the end, furthering the underlying feeling that China's ready to hold firm through these uncertain times.
We will not sit by and let the legitimate rights and interests of the Chinese people be deprived of, and we will not sit by and let the international trade rules and multilateral trading system be undermined. If the U.S. is determined to fight a tariff and trade war, China's response will continue to the end.
This could mean letting their 438 billion in yearly exports to the U.S., around 12% of their total, dwindle down. China's notorious for transshipping to avoid tariffs, like routing goods to Vietnam and slapping a made in Vietnam label to dodge U.S. duties. But Trump's administration is getting wise to such tactics, like also putting fees on goods under 800 to kill the de minimis exploitations. That will significantly hurt companies like Temu and Shine. The U.S. has laid out 10% tariffs across the board for other countries for the time being, which could rise for transshipping hubs like Vietnam and Taiwan. Why? Trump's targeting these countries to choke as China's backdoor routes, forcing their goods to face the full 145% hit. This acts like a proxy tariff on China, on top of the current ones, taking more money out of their 3.5 trillion yearly global exports. Do some napkin, man, and this administration could affect around 600 billion worth of exports yearly. Directly and indirectly, China's possibly got in a strategic plan, but that much impact means a lot of jobs. Lost low-level workers shifting fields, facing the layoffs. With population as big as China, we're talking millions potentially unemployed. But this isn't about tariffs on sneakers or smartphones. It's about technology, supply chains, and control. The U.S. is cracking down on Chinese tech companies, like banning Huawei from accessing chips and software. China's hitting back with export controls on rare earth minerals, stuff we need for everything from electric cars to make even missiles. Trade wars disrupt how things get made and sold, prices go up, supply chains get messy, and entire industries can shift. To understand where this is heading, let's look back at what happened to the U.S. In 1970s, the U.S. was king of manufacturing. Factories pumped out cars, steel, appliances, you name it. Places like Detroit and Pittsburgh were thriving. But then things started to change. Other countries like Japan and later China figured out how to make stuff cheaper and sometimes better. They had lower wages, fewer regulations, and a hunger for growth. By the 1980s and 1990s, American companies were outsourcing like crazy. Why pay a worker in Ohio when you can pay a fraction for someone in Shanghai? Entire industries like textiles, electronics, steel moved overseas. Between 1980 and 2000s, the U.S. lost millions of factory jobs. towns hollowed out, the Rust Belt became a thing. It wasn't just jobs, it was a whole way of life that shifted. Now, U.S. didn't collapse, it pivoted. It leaned into tech, finances, and services. Silicon Valley boomed. Wall Street got richer. But for a lot of people, especially in those factory towns, it felt like the ground fell from under them. That shift reshaped America's economy, its politics, and even its identity, similar to what's happening in China now. Assuming in China for decades, China's been the world's factory. Your phone, your laptop, probably your shirt. Something you own says made in China. Since the 1990s, China's economy exploded by betting big on manufacturing and exports. Cheap labor, massive factories, and a government that said build, build, build. It worked. China looked at millions out of poverty and became an economic giant. In 1990, Chinese exports were about 60 billion. By 1995, they climbed to 150 billion. In 2005, they hit 750 billion. Fast forward to 2024, and China's sitting at 3.5 trillion. Definitely quite the uptrend. Cargo ships stacked high. But now there's a different picture. China's workforce is shrinking. Fewer young people, more retirees. Wages are rising, so it's not the cheapest place to manufacture anymore. Add in global supply chain chaos, labor powers clashing and shifting the way global trade is done. With trade barriers like these tariffs, companies are rethinking where to set up shop. It's like the perfect storm, forcing a pivot away from manufacturing. Does this sound familiar? It's starting to look a lot like the pressures the U.S. faced when its manufacturing slipped away. But here's where it is interesting. China is not just saying back, they're trying to rewrite the script. They're not just going to let their economy slide. The government's pouring money into high-tech industries, AI labs, green energy, electric vehicles rolling out. They want to move up the value chain just like the U.S. did when it went from factories to software. Instead of making cheap stuff, they want to design the next big thing. But here's the catch, pivoting isn't easy. When the US did, it took decades, and a lot of people got left behind. China's got its own challenges. Their economy's slow growth rates are at the lowest in years. Real estate's a huge part of their wealth. It's wobbling. Millions of empty apartments that can't sell. And the trade wars making it harder to sell goods abroad while they figure this out. If China pulls it off, they could come out stronger, leading in tech and innovation. But if they stumble, we could see factories close, jobs vanish, maybe even social unrest. Either way, this is a turning point just like the U.S. had. To redefine itself, China's facing the moment where its whole economic identity might change. China's transformation isn't just headlines. It's reshaping the world you live in. The stuff you buy could get pricier. Phones, clothes, the tech you use could change. Entire industries might move to new countries, creating winners and losers. And globally, this is a tug of war between the U.S. and China, and it's setting the stage for who runs the show in the 21st century. So what do you think? Is China heading for a fall? Or are they about to leap into a new era? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. If you like this dive, hit the like button, subscribe, ring a bell, so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.